budget backup data is a list of
How many students we're talking about, roughly?
It's varied from year to year, but
Roughly
last
30 to
year, so
40
it's been about
students,
30.
Or is it more than that? Is it more?
I don't really know.
It's in the budget book.
I mean, 30 students, it would pay for us from a high level
Fix your
to
track,
have a
it
phone
would fix
call.
your track and some other things. It would resurface the tennis courts. It would.
But we can reach out with a one-to-one phone call to.
I don't know. I don't know what the privacy
What
rules are on
percentage,
that.
what percentage do you estimate
just the kids that don't have
students that are maybe or city
Of the people who responded, when we had, of the ones that Mrs. Stoyak spoke with, I think we had 2 responses that said about diversity, and one of the people who responded to mine said that.
Yeah.
And I know of one who went to the magnet schools for diversity reasons for middle school and is returning to Rham for high school.
Okay.
And if you look
I know several students
Yeah.
just through.
And that's not something we're going to,
No.
that we can address. We can't address that.
If you look at the budget backup,
Yep.
in,
You have the numbers in there.
I've listed kids by school.
Right. Roughly, what's
What's
the
the
number
number?
of kids roughly? Is it, can you just, looking at the page, is it 10, is it 30, is it 50?
It's about, my guess is 50 without counting.
Okay. All right, so it's more than that.
So it would be helpful to know about, I can't remember that document that you're looking at.
It's in the budget
But
backup.
what is the total of cost of,
About 265,000.
so that's cost in the 3, whatever
Your portion, yeah.
portion?
Now, granted, if those kids came into the district, it would impact our budget funding for number of teachers and so forth, but it stays here.
Right, but just another, just so I can remember this again, is that, so does the magnet school get, we have to pay whatever that tuition is?
And then the state supplements that.
So we get a bill, we have to pay directly to the school, right? It's an invoice.
Correct.
Comes through.
Correct.
Any other questions for Jane on the budget? Okay, if not, we'll move to item number 6, presentation, Scott Leslie, update from the high school.
But I promise you, I'm not going to talk about money, I'm not going to talk about the state of Connecticut, I'm going to talk about magnet schools.
Just to, if this is correct, it says student 65 on the second page. So
Okay.
it's 65.
65 students.
None of those
Close to
are
200
special ed, is that correct?
Some of them are special ed.
Some of them have plans that have to be addressed, like, still go
But
to the
that's
school.
separate, right? That's separate from.
No, exactly. That's carried in special ed tuition.
So it's not in this document, special ed students are not in this document.
The students are, but the costs are not. The costs are in the special ed.
The special ed costs are part of the related services in my budget.
Right. So you got the flat rate, right? And if there's any special costs attached to that gets paid through.
For example, one.
Right, but I'm trying to figure out.
So the cost may not be just 6,000 or whatever our portion of the cost is if there's a plan in place.
I just want to know that this list here doesn't include special ed students.
It does. It may, but we have to pay flat rate, we have to pay that flat rate, and then it's a related service like.
That's in addition.
That comes off the special ed rate. So
We don't,
it's here.
we don't know how many non-special ed students that are going to.
I'm sure we can figure it out.
Can we find that out?
Yeah, we should know that number.
So
Trying to.
Okay, Scott, that's something even more promising.
Well, I got a lot of it.
Okay.
What I'd like to present, I'm going to look back and I'm going to look forward. What I'd like to do is start by walking you through the NEAS commendations, recommendations, and talk a little, I'm not going to go through all of them. You've seen them already. If you've looked at the NEAS report, you've seen them. I believe Bob shared a letter with you recently that included the highlighted commendations and recommendations. So what I'd like to do is walk you through, I've got all of the recommendations and commendations here, but I'm only going to focus on some particular highlighted commendations and highlighted recommendations. Just to bring everybody up to speed, the accreditation process obligates every public high school in New England to go through a peer review accreditation process every 10 years. The New England Association of Schools and Colleges is the accrediting agency for all New England high schools, New England colleges, and universities. So all colleges and universities also go through this process. The importance of accreditation is widespread. We're expected to adhere to the 7 standards for accreditation. UConn won't accept a student that doesn't graduate from an accredited high school. So there are certainly many, many benefits. And the standards around accreditation really are not focused only on test scores and budgets. They're really focused on personalization, positive school climate, instructional practices, the use of assessment to identify where your students are, and then to implement instructional practices to help them move along. So I'm just going to go through some of the highlighted ones, but one of the things you'll see real quickly is that my follow-up presentation, which is going to focus on our elimination of level 3 classes and moving to an 8-period day, addresses many of the recommendations that we're obligated to address over the next couple of years. So, the 7 standards, the first one, core values, beliefs, expectations for learning. This is a document that identifies the priorities of Rham. We are commended for the process that we went through, the inclusiveness of it in terms of including parents and students. We're commended for the academic rigor evident throughout our program, both electives and core courses, and the active reflection of our expectations, core values, and beliefs throughout the entire school.
Scott,
Yes?
throughout this whole document, you use this buzzword 21st century.
Yes.
What does that really mean?
Great, that's a great question. And my involvement with NIASC is I'm no longer a commission member, chair of the commission, but I am on the committee that is reinventing the standards. And one of my main recommendations at the last meeting just a few weeks ago was, can we get rid of 21st century skills? When the standards for accreditation are updated every 5 years. And when these standards were updated originally in, 2005, and then they were, the standards as we see them now were for the most part put together in 2005 and updated in 2011. 2005 they adopted 21st century learning expectations, hoping that everybody would in fact understand what they were. And you'll notice that it's always lowercase because at the time there was a national organization, 21st Century Learning. Essentially what 21st century learning expectations are, and again, we're getting rid of those so that I think it'll enhance clarity, is basically problem solving, critical thinking, advanced. So it's not just English, math, social studies, science, it's critical thinking skills, it's problem solving skills. So, yeah, we're going to be losing some of that educational jargon, which I think just seems to confuse me. And again, I'm not going to go through some of these that are italicized only because they went to highlight. You have them all. In terms of the recommendations, I'm going to come back to these in a little bit specific to the core values because they're a little bit complicated. In terms of the second standard curriculum, the newly hired curriculum director, I think as we made the case, district as large as Rham, it's ridiculous not to have somebody overseeing curriculum instruction. Our library media specialist, Jerry Deneen. Well, you know Lauren Fearman as our curriculum director, and Jerry Deneen as our library media specialist is highlighted specifically for all that she does in terms of supporting the curriculum, supporting instruction, and I would say most importantly for most faculty at this point is her support in terms of the integration of technology.
One thing I missed on the curriculum director in this thing was how they relate back to the 3 tenets. I didn't see anything in there where they're coordinating with the 3 tenets.
Actually,
curriculum director himself.
you'll see that in a second, the effective curricular coordination, vertical articulation. Well, this is through grade
That's
seven.
grade seven through 12.
Right,
I'm
yes.
looking before that.
Right. They, and I'm not sure if it's addressed specifically, they're stressed in the body of the report that there's some, but it's, yeah. That's been struggling for us for a long time, we're trying to coordinate 3 elementary districts. Remember, this is looking at the high school only, so.
But did they ask? Did
Yes, absolutely,
they-
yes.
So is it going to be presented to them? Because I didn't see it in here.
It didn't show up as a commendation, and I don't think it showed up as a recommendation either. Yeah.
They specifically talked about, since we are a 7-12 district, what we do 7-12. But we did talk with them about what we've started within the last 2 years. We have regular meetings now with the administration of the 3 schools, including this year, we had meetings between our 6th and 7th grade teachers. We have we've had 3 or 4 meetings last year and again this year with the administrators of all the schools to talk about exactly those things. They weren't able to, and because we're a 7-12 district, to interview the administrators for the 3 elementary schools, but they did hear what we're putting together, so.
And the board approved plan to move to one-to-one laptop initiative is also. In terms of the recommendations, the highlighted recommendations, and the highlighted recommendations, the ones with the asterisks, those are so important to us at the school level, is that those are the recommendations that we need to address within 2 years. So we'll have a 2-year progress report, and we'll need to demonstrate that we have addressed each of those. The non-italicized recommendations will have to be completed in time for our 5-year report. So in terms of curriculum, complete the written curriculum. Second one I think is critical. We'll be talking about that more in a few minutes. Increase opportunities for collaboration between and among teachers of all disciplines, and ensure the alignment between written and taught curriculum, which essentially is make sure that there's an updated written curriculum for all courses, and that's what's being delivered in the classroom. One of the things that Lauren has been working really effectively on is making sure that all of our curricula are updated in a consistent format, and that they're all being used to deliver instruction in the classroom.
Question?
Sure.
Are we, based on how you read the recommendations, are we moving fast enough towards revising the curriculum?
We are part of, one of the things that was true with this is our written report was put together before the curriculum director position existed. So they're coming in to do this review with a written report based on what was happening before this position existed, before the last 1.5 years worth of work is done, which is part of why they said one of the commendations is having this position in place. They just want to see that what we've started doing over the last 1.5 years, 2 years, is that they need the written portion of that as well. So I think we're moving along at the right speed. If we were writing our report up about what we had done over the last 3 years, now we would have a different report from them. And that's what we're going to do. We'll give them what we've done in the last 2 years.
In terms of instruction, the third standard, we're commended for the infusion of technology into the classroom. Before we have the one-to-one initiative, they witness teachers using a variety of technologies across disciplines. I'm particularly proud of the variety of additional supports provided to students during and outside the regular school day, the tutoring that we provide, the extra help we provide for students, both during the school day and after the school day. And faculty's willingness to share professional development experience with colleagues. We've used much of our professional development time for teachers to collaborate. We don't have the time formally built into the school day, but we have used the professional time available to them. That shows up in the report. In terms of the recommendations, here again, this is one of the themes that developed in the report, develop and put a plan to provide formal time instructions for collaboration between teachers to improve instruction. The next is another piece, which again, you'll see more about in a little bit in terms of the level 3 courses, ensure that teachers' instructional practices involve all students regardless of course level. So they're asking that make sure that whether the students in a low-functioning course or a high-functioning course, that they're being delivered the same degree of challenge. Assessment for student learning is the fourth standard. We're being commended for the frequent use and variety of our formative and summative assessments to evaluate student learning. And here again, I think this is an important one, the specific, timely, and corrective feedback provided to students to ensure that they revise and improve their work. So teachers aren't simply grading just to give the student a grade, but they're correcting in order to help that student improve their learning. In terms of recommendations, develop and implement a plan to ensure regular review and revision of grading and reporting practices to ensure alignment with the school's core values and beliefs. And this is going to come back. I'm going to hold off on commenting on that to the end of the presentation here, because this is related to some other recommendations. School culture and leadership. Dedication of leadership team to ensure a safe, positive, respectful, and supportive culture. Opportunities for teachers to initiate and exercise leadership within the building. Again, we talked about themes, develop and implement a plan to provide structured opportunities for teachers to engage in professional discourse, reflection, create analysis, teach and learn. And I'll talk about how we're doing that when we talk about 8th grade day. School resources for learning. Standard focuses on guidance, special ed, library media center. Accommodations, the wide variety of intervention services that are provided for all students, particularly those students who are identified at risk. And then the culture of collaboration between support service personnel and general education teachers to support students. In terms of the recommendations, this is something that I know we've talked about, particularly in the program committee, update the written school counseling curriculum, aligning with the standards and implement development. That's an area we've been working on certainly for a while. In terms of community resources for learning, the accommodation is a school site plan that supports the delivery of high-quality school programs and services. And that's an interesting one because that's an area that this board certainly has devoted a great deal of time to. In the structure of the report, which is really focusing on teaching and learning, their conclusion is that the building supports learning, it supports teaching. The accreditation process isn't really, we don't have the experts visiting us who would be able to give us specific information on the fields and that sort of thing. So this is really more focused on teaching and learning in the classroom, the general types of activities that students do. No recommendations, community resources for learning. The community resources for learning really looks at the Board of Ed, the support that the board provides to school budgeting in terms of making sure that there's adequate funding for teaching and learning, and the upkeep of the building and such.
Back on that accommodations, number 4, a variety of opportunities that engage parents and families. I was surprised to see that there is accommodations, and that's a problem that we've been struggling with.
Well, I think they saw a lot of the opportunities that we've offered for parents. So we're not always successful in getting parents in. I think they looked at our work with HM and our community forums, school forums, the information we provide to parents. And the inclusion of parents on interview committees, on a number of the initiative committees that we've had. Now, one of the, and I think I may have mentioned some of this in moving into the self-study process a couple years ago. There was a group of schools, Green Boston, that had written a letter 4 years ago from the ask, basically making the argument that with all of the federal mandates and all the state mandates, it was becoming more and more difficult to include accreditation into the mix. And these are all high-powered, high-flying schools, and that both bring around Boston. And their argument was that with all of the new initiatives at both federal and state level, accreditation was becoming just one more thing they needed to do. And what that created was a discussion about how should the accreditation process be modified. And one of the first things that we looked at was a number of the indicators tended to be very prescriptive. So a high school, in order to ensure personalized education for its students, really had to have a formal advisory in place. Well, a lot of schools argue, we really don't need a formal advisory to make that happen. We have other processes in place. Another one of the indicators required that you had X number of heterogeneous degree classes. So you had at least some core classes that all students were in. You didn't, they were honors classes, they were lower level classes, they were a mix of students. That became the numbers standard. And so we were able to modify those two standards. So schools are no longer held to those. The one indicator and standard that remained for our visit, which most schools have a terribly difficult time trying to meet, is the one that indicates that we need to have a process in place to ensure that all of our students are mastering our expectations for learning. And the way that the standard requires that is through the use of school-wide rubrics, through the use of benchmark assessments. And we've put all those processes in place, but it's a difficult dance to move through. So one of the recommendations or the special progress report that we have, which will be due in January 2017, is focusing really on the use of school-wide rubrics, making sure that we clearly designate the use of the set of school-wide rubrics, which we do have. Publish the rubrics, ensure that our social and civic expectations are challenging and measurable. Ensure that prior to each unit of study, all teachers use rubrics to provide students with an outline of what they're going to need to be assessed on, and ensure that teachers provide students with appropriate rubrics prior to some of the assessments. Now, we should be, by all rights, addressing these in January of 2017. However, the asterisk I included in the note at the bottom indicates that the NEAS Commission is going to modify those expectations, those indicators, in June of this year. So they'll be meeting at their June meeting, and what they'll be essentially allowing schools to do is using a little more leeway in terms of how you go about assessing whether your students are mastering your expectations for learning. I included, I believe that you all received a PowerPoint that lists the processes that we use. It lists our expectations for learning. It gives you an example of a benchmark assessment that a teacher would use. It lists a rubric that teachers would use, shows you how we incorporate those into PowerSchool. The challenge that we have is asking ourselves, is that still the most efficient way and the most meaningful way of assessing student mastery of our expectations for learning? And I suspect that we're going to see some changes there. So the special progress report that we have due in January is actually on hold at this point until NEAS provides us with an update in terms of what those changes are going to look like. So that's the report. I think overall it was very positive. We anticipated the recommendations and actually have already started to work on the most significant recommendations. So, any questions at all?
I just want to point out that, I know this was a board job in preparing, and it seems that it went along seamlessly, and I really
Great.
appreciate all your efforts.
Great, thank you. Well, I have to tell you, I haven't already said the names, I've been negligent. May Coffey, one of our English teachers, and Brendan Burgess, one of our social studies teachers, were the co-chairs for the steering committee that essentially ran this process through, and they did an absolutely perfect job of doing that. So,
And I would add to Amy's comments, because if I remember when we first looked at this, when we first got the letter that we were coming up, I know there was a request to request an extension to put it off, and I know the board didn't want to do that, and I know there was some angst with that because of all the other changes with teacher evaluations and Common Core and all that taking place. So, I'll echo with Amy on behalf of all the work that everybody put into this, because I know it was tough. So.
great, thanks. Well, and it was really a collective effort of parents, students, teachers, and really, I couldn't be more pleased with it. So, I think it accurately reflects Rham. I think it does a nice job of highlighting what we all recognize as being great, and then identifying those things that don't.
The only other question I would have is it possible for us to get your copy either in PowerPoint or in PDF, color copy, because of the quality of the scan?
Sure, okay.
It's excellent.
Can we make that a general rule that all presentations come as either PDF or not a scan, just scan businesses, not work?
We just lost a lot of the quality, because some of the fonts really small and some,
Right.
as you get larger, it gets grainy.
I just had a question, this kind of jumps off of our prior conversation. Do you know if magnet schools are evaluated or accredited?
They are just beginning to be accredited. So there are some that are, but they're,
Can we pay them more?
They're not
Please.
obligated, you know, I know there are certain schools, like you said, like UConn, that supposedly do not accept students.
Add that to
They're
one of
not
our posters.
accredited. Huh?
Add that to one of our posters. Our
Yeah.
school's accredited, our magnet school isn't. Gonna check why we were.
yeah, they are starting that process.
They are.
So is he coming to accept those kids?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. You know, and I think the disadvantage it puts a student coming from a non-accredited school, if there was one, right now, I think all the schools in Connecticut are accredited. But if a town decided not to accredit their high school, it would put those students at a significant disadvantage from a new magnet school that opened up, that wasn't accredited because they're too young and have to go through the process.
Because I think it's a great analysis. That's really going on.
One of your slides was in communication. I know you made some really good strides as far as reaching out to people. Is there more improvement coming? Are you still working on that as far as?
Absolutely. Yes, and actually, in my slide on opiates, we talked about some of the communications we've done within the community as well. But yeah, that's one of the things that we're always trying to reach out, trying to get more people to come join us. And most of, like, well, the level 3 and the 8-period day, hopefully you've seen that, we try to send stuff out to parents beforehand so that rather than, like keeping people informed so they know what's happening. If you have questions, ask us so that, I also take advantage of my students here at England, and we have a monthly principal's advisory, so we have a group of students that I'm also able to, it's not parents and community members, but in a high school setting, I've got a lot of really smart young adults who can give us feedback and help us there too. So we look at it not just within the community, but also within the building, trying to enhance communication here as well. So you'll notice that one of the recommendations was focused on ensuring that all students, no matter what level, receive challenging instruction. This wasn't the reason why we went, this is one of the reasons I'll say why we went with this, but there were other reasons too. And when we looked at, we took a look at our own classes. Now, Rham High School, right now, this school year, effectively has level 3 classes, which are designed for students who require remediation, some kind of additional support. We have level 2 classes, which are college prep. And in a level 2 class, you might have students that struggle a little bit with reading, and they might have some fundamental skills that they need a little extra support, but these are college-bound kids that we expect all of them to go to college. We have level 1, which are more challenging. We have honors, we have AP, and that's been the design for forever and a day. And within the last year, we've really been looking hard at our level 3 classes in terms of who's in those classes. Are we serving those students as best as we could? And one of the things we realize when we look at our students in our English level 3, that in grade 9, 100% of those students had IEPs. Now the state asks us to balance our classes so that no more than 50% of our students have IEPs. An IEP is an individual education plan that is provided for a student who's categorized as special education. And you can see that the percentage of special ed students decreases as they go on, but they're still above 50%. In social studies, it's the same thing. We saw the percentage of students with IEPs, special ed students specifically, too high. We were tipping beyond the 50% mark. Same thing in science. So, we recognize that those courses, and I should stress that those are very small classes. So we don't have 25 kids to work with. In a level 3 class, we're probably looking more at like 15 or so students. With those kind of numbers, really we're violating the no fewer than 50% of students, or no more than 50% of students with IEPs. If we said, well, okay, we'll call those special ed classes, then our special ed students would be under the amount of time required to be with their non-disabled peers. So, we decided, let's just get rid of it, because many high schools have. So the question is, how do we best meet the learning needs of those students? Well, what we're doing is we are creating, using our co-teaching model. So we have classes already, and we've had this for quite a while, for many years, where we have, in those classes where we have students that require additional support, we'll have a regular ed teacher and a special ed teacher, co-teaching, so that the special ed teacher is able to provide the extra support and encouragement for those students that need. So in eliminating our level 3 classes, it allows us, one, to move away from those really low-level classes. It allows us to move away from having classes that are predominantly special ed. So in transitioning those students into level 2 classes, we have to make sure that we have an adequate number of level 2 sections so that those students can be distributed and we don't have level 2 classes that just simply become dumping grounds and become level 3 classes. And we were able to successfully do that with our schedule looking ahead to next year.
How many students are going to be on level 2 class?
We try to cap that number at 18 for level 2. So they're going to be 18 to 22 realistically when you look at the entire schedule.
And before, when we had the level 3 classes, was a special ed aid also in those courses?
Not necessarily, only if it had students with IEPs that required a co-teaching environment. So not all level 2 classes are co-taught.
How have you adjusted the rubric requirements for level 2s to match now your students that are in there?
We differentiate the instruction to help those students still reach the same skills or master the same skills. They may not do it at the same degree as an AP student, but we're still requiring them to master the same skills.
These are highly students that do not require a specialized curriculum. They just require the accommodations and the support to meet the regular ed curriculum. We still have students that are in modified curriculum classes like basic English and basic math.
What are we going to do to make sure the course stays on course?
Well, so what we've done is increase the number of co-taught classes so that those students that need those accommodations, will have the special ed teacher there with them to make sure that they don't fall behind, make sure that they can keep up with the rest of the students.
And who's making sure the course doesn't fall down?
Well, we have a teacher, we have 2 teachers in the classroom, we have the department coordinator, we have teachers, well, actually, can you hold that question? Because I'm going to come and answer that in about 5 minutes. Making sure we have an adequate number of basic level courses, and again, as Dawn indicated, that's really for a student who requires modified curriculum. So this is a student whose cognitive abilities really require a different type of curriculum than what most of the students are exposed to. Professional development opportunities focus on differentiation strategies. This has been an emphasis throughout this year. We have one more professional activity going on this year that will again focus on differentiation strategies. And this will be another professional development thing that will continue to carry on for next year. So this addresses in some way making sure that I have students of varied abilities, that I'm making sure that I have skills and strategies for addressing all of the students within my class. Another key here, and this I think Rich starts to get into what you're asking, is to provide co-teachers and departments with time to collaborate and plan. So that if I'm teaching general science 2, whoever else is teaching general science 2 is also working. We have time to get together and work together to make sure that I'm moving at the same pace as the other teachers are moving. So the teachers of like classes have that opportunity to meet and discuss and make sure that we're all on the same level. Some of the changes that are a little different in that direction, in terms of our math essentials classes, so these would have been our level 3 classes in math. We have decided to maintain those math essential classes because they're defined by the skills, and more than any of the other classes, the math skills that students are able to, or wherever they are in their evolution as a math student, makes it very difficult for some of those students to move too quickly or to go into what you might consider a regular math class. So we're going to continue to have those to make sure that those students still get the level of instruction necessary. We recognize that some of these courses will have a majority of special ed students in them, and so they will be identified as time not with, they won't be identified as time with non-disabled kids. So we're going to call a spade. Some of them are going to be with mostly special ed students. So.
How would you differentiate that class from a resource room class? Like that's like a math class in a resource room?
Right.
How is it different?
This is still going to have the same curriculum. We're still going to try to move the students, but recognizing that they need a lot more support. And so whereas a resource room really kind of takes students individually and lets them move, this is really, we're going to be more of a group instruction course than it would be a resource.
Okay.
The other change that we're making, just to give you a little history, we had both our social studies program and our 9th and 10th grade science program had combined level 1 and 2 levels probably for about 15 years. About 8 to 10 years ago, social studies found that because there's so much writing, there's so much reading in those courses, that they felt the level 2 students needed additional reading supports. So about 8 years ago, we separated into differentiated level 1 and level 2 social studies courses. So up through this year, general science and biology are the only courses that are combined level 1, level 2. We're now adding level 3 into that mix. And so we're going to be creating separate level 1 and 2 classes so that those level 3 class students will be in a more comfortable environment and there won't be be such a disparate range of students. One of the problems that we found when we split the social studies into discrete level 1 and 2 classes was that students tended to travel together, depending upon where they were. So when they were in biology classes together, they tended to travel in other classes together. So in essence, it was an unanticipated bit of cracking. So we think that we're going to be able to much better meet the specific learning needs of each of the students. Easiness. So the overall goal, provide each student with a more rigorous education, make sure that we have the resources available and in place to make all of that happen. And unfortunately, by eliminating level 3 classes, by using existing resources, we were able to do that.
What are you doing for level 1 students?
In terms of,
Trying to fulfill their needs to make them honor students.
well, we continue to try to push them to take more difficult courses if they're capable. Again, a lot of our professional development is looking at differentiation, so it's not just for level 2, level 3 students, but it also is focused on those level 1 students, so that the teacher can take a student that may be on the fence or maybe not working as hard and kind of pick up some of those skills to push them along.
And it sort of was when I was surprised to see the recommendation last year of honor students in math recommended to go to level 1 for pre-cal for the whole class, which didn't seem to be the right direction that we want to go. Something's
Right.
wrong there, but the teacher came in and said that.
Right, so I have to talk to that teacher about it going on there. But we do try to push them, now, not every student, but we do try to push students up, where we can look at our honors and AP enrollments that go up like that. Yeah, that'd be a bit of an easy situation.
Yeah, it was the whole pre-cal this.
Have you looked at all at some of the math courses going to like life skill courses? Have you checked books, how to do that sort of thing?
We have, well, yes, and we have our personal finance courses. So we,
Do they count as a math course? That's.
no, those don't, they don't count as a math course.
Have you
No.
looked at that as a possibility for some of these students?
For some of like the basic English, yes, basic math is yes. But for our other, because the curriculum is really rich, like if you want to plan to move out of college, we plan on all of our kids moving out of college, so we're going to expect that they're going to follow the math sequence that's going to best prepare them. So in terms of the personal finance piece, you know, unless it's a unique student, that's usually something in addition to the math. And it really doesn't, you know, personal finance is about using math skills to solve problems. But they don't tend to be terribly sophisticated math skills. They might be hard to do, and it might be hard to put them in context, but in terms of having a student follow a sequence of algebra, geometry, pre-calc, it doesn't really fit into that sequence. So we have the personal finance, and we've gone from being a class that was a physical classroom to making them all online now, so that's increased the number of students that it's available. Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
We've been having that discussion in programming underneath about life skills.
Right. Well, there are recommendations, although people don't go very far, that all students should graduate high school with some form of education in financial accounting. So we've got it down. Right now, we've got about 80, so probably about 90 to 100 students a year who are part of that online program. So they're not every student. So one of the key recommendations coming out of the accreditation report was the need to provide collaborative time for teachers, common plan time, collaboration time for teachers so that they could have that ability if they're co-teaching to make sure that they're planning together. If they're teaching the same courses, they can work to plan together. So next year, we're moving to an 8-period day. It addresses the need to increase collaborative time. This is particularly important with the elimination of level 3 to allow co-teachers to work together in department, so teachers in the same courses, and the teachers teaching interdisciplinary courses. So we have our American Studies course with an English and a social studies teacher. We need to make sure that they have time to collaborate. We're looking to provide even additional time for mediation, intervention, student support throughout the day, and increased scheduling flexibility. We have so many singleton courses that are only offered 1 period out of the day. And so many of our students who are interested in specialty areas or students who are interested in more than one AP course find themselves in a position of not being able to take all the courses they'd like to because of the inevitable conflicts that fall during the same period. So the 8-period day, essentially we pull 2 minutes out of each period, which allows us to schedule full 8 periods out of the day. And how this will look different from a teacher standpoint, teachers will still teach 5 classes. We'll still have a prep period. We'll still have a duty period. So currently that takes up their 7th period day. What this adds is a full period where they will eat their lunch, their 25-minute lunch, and then the rest of the period will be a collaborative period where the teacher has time to both collaborate with their colleagues and also provide additional assistance, extra help for students. So in creating the schedule for next year, our first priority was to make sure that co-teachers were all scheduled during the same period, collaboration period, 5, 6, or 7. We then asked teachers, tell us who it is you need to be working with. So if you need to be working with the other biology teachers, okay, that's a collaboration team. If you need to be working with the other world Western Civ teachers, that's a collaboration team. In building the schedule this year, we've been able to meet all of those requests. So moving ahead to next year, all of our teachers who need to collaborate are scheduled together for the same collaboration period. What this also does is it eliminates that split lunch. I don't know if any of you have had students have second lunch. We currently run 3 lunch waves. If you have a second lunch, you go to class, you go to lunch, and then you go back to class. Not the most educationally sound practice, but in a 7-period day, you didn't have a whole lot of choice. From the student schedule, they will, just as they do now, they'll be capable of scheduling 7 periods. We're requiring that all students take a lunch period. So rather than giving them the option of scheduling 8 periods, schedule a lunch period. And what that lunch period provides them with is extra time for homework, provides them time, extra additional time to use the media center, get extra help, or get support. Actually, at one of our principal's advisories, not to point fingers, but I think Harry, you mentioned hey, we could take 8 periods and graduate early. Yeah, Harry suggested, hey, we could take 8 periods a day. We graduate early. And I think when I came back the next month, I said, well, actually, we're not going to do that. Because for a lot of reasons. One, we don't have the faculty to let every student take 8 periods. We calculated if we were going to let every student take that extra periods of class, it would cost a tremendous amount of money to enhance the staff to do that. But where the teachers really came out is, one, students need time, because a lot of students don't have study halls. So they are taking so many advanced classes. They really need at least 20 minutes out of the day, do homework, get some extra help. And maybe for some of those kids, sit back for a few minutes and take a deep breath. And I think I didn't get any kickback on that one, like, no, I want to graduate early. Mostly response was, wow, that would be great. Having 20 minutes of my own during the school day would be a real luxury.
Now, does that help with the kids who are taking a full schedule with a lab?
Exactly. This is scheduling for next year. We have the most successful build than we've ever had because we have an extra year to throw it in. So it allows us to be creative. So some of the things that it's doing is that typically at this point in time, we would have moved multiple courses because we found that there's a lot of conflicts. We've only had to move 2 courses. We typically at this time are looking at kids that are like, man, I want to take this lab science, but the lab falls during my Spanish 5 class. This year, we have much more flexibility. So, you know, we are breaking our rules a little bit in some cases. So we have some students who are taking a science course, let's say 8th period, and there's a lab one day during 7th period. So there's one day a week where they're not gonna have lunch. They're gonna eat lunch in a class. You know, we're gonna make arrangements for those guys.
Some of the AP science classes have 2 labs.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really opened that up significantly for us in terms of helping students get the schedules that they need, want, and reduce a lot of those conflicts.
What's the lunch period?
So lunch period is going to be 46 minutes.
Sorry?
46 minutes. So they'll have 25 minutes for lunch and then 20 minutes for doing extra work and homework, whatever it is that they do. The challenge, so this PowerPoint was put together a while ago, long before we started scheduling. So now that we've started scheduling, the challenges that we set for ourselves is to cover all of the duties. Every teacher has a duty. And with 3 lunch periods, that means that there's more lunch duty coverage to be had. So far, so good. And remember, our goal was to do this without any budgetary expenditures. We weren't looking for additional faculty, we were looking to just make this happen with existing resources. It requires an additional math, writing, and academic lab. Academic labs will have study halls that are much more focused. So the academic lab teacher calls home, they make contact with the parents, they have contracts with the kids. So this is for a kid who really needs that extra supervision to make sure that they're going to get their work done. Math labs and writing labs are specific. So if a math teacher has a math lab, that's where any kid can go during that period to get extra help, or whatever math class they may be taking. Same thing with the writing lab.
Scott, can I just pause for 1 second? I just want to ask you, is Dr. Shalusi doing the presentation after Scott tonight?
Warren's going to do the presentation after stuff, because Dr. Susie is the thing commitment.
Okay, all right, no, that's fine. I'm just asking because we only allocated 30 minutes in the schedule for this, so I just want to kind of get an idea on timing. I just want to kind of get an idea on timing of how much more time we have, because you still have an entire section on opiates.
Right.
And those things.
I think that should be fairly clear.
It's up to you. I don't want to rush you. I'm just trying to think of time because
I think
we're almost.
the presentation from the middle school is probably about 15, 20 minutes.
We'll make it 15 minutes. You'll decide how long you want it to be after I've talked for 15 minutes.
Can we schedule a seminar during lunch, once a week or once a month for kids to maybe learn some personal finance or some of the other life skills?
Lots of months.
Hey, you know,
There you go, nice buzzword.
anything's open during that time. Yeah. You know, right now, we're crunching the numbers and taking care of the logistics of it, but once it's in place, absolutely, we'll do lots of things. Do that. Yeah. I'll sign, Rich, I'll sign that work. Tell us what day you want to be, I'll sign up. So we talked about maximizing common collaboration time. Fortunately, we've been able to address those with the schedule. So right now, you know, I know that we're early in this, well, not early, but mid in the schedule process. But it looks that it's meeting all those expectations we have. So our goal is that by moving to an 8-period day, or by limiting level 3, they really do go hand in hand and one supports the other. We really are hopeful that that's going to benefit all students, some students in particular. Try to move it to debate?
Yes, unless anybody has any questions.
So the question came up, I think, last board meeting in terms of, how does the school respond? What are we starting, what are we seeing in terms of and opiate use? Right now, when, vaping was a kind of hit all of us, when I say all of us, in all high schools in Connecticut, like wildfire last year, kind of caught with adolescents. And none of us had any policies whatsoever, and none of us really knew a whole lot about it. What we discovered is that vaping is the use of an electronic delivery device, and it delivers water vapor that usually includes heated and dissipated oils. They can be just simply flavored oils or scented oils. Mostly, they're oils that have various degrees of nicotine. And so you can purchase various degrees of nicotine. You can buy very small doses of nicotine. You can buy very high doses of nicotine. So students and adults and anyone using these things can regulate the amount of nicotine that they're intaking. Now, unfortunately, adolescents who don't always, you guys don't need to listen to this, who don't always have the self-control that adults are supposed to have, are not very good at regulating the amount of nicotine they put in. So we were seeing students, going to the 18 grams of nicotine pretty quickly off. So very clear to the experts in the field, very clear to us that were seeing this, that these were really addictive delivery items. They weren't safe cigarettes. They weren't a safe way to inhale water vapor. They weren't certainly a safe way to inhale nicotine. They came with all sorts of problems. What we've done is we've included vaping with our tobacco policy, since they're essentially the same thing. Now, some students, I shouldn't say some students, some individuals can also do dabs. Dabs are when the vial that you add into your electronic delivery device has THC, which is the potent part of marijuana. Many ways that they can do it. They can do it on their own. They can buy it. So when we confiscate a vape, oftentimes we'll do a test to see if it has THC in the oil. Responses range just as they do for tobacco and other products, from addiction cessation to disciplinary responses. So when a student is their first time out, is caught with a vape, we will always counsel them to our smoking cessation program and look at it as an addiction issue and try our best to get that student involved in a program that's going to help them break that habit. If they're a repeat offender, just as with cigarettes, there will be disciplinary consequences as well. Probably the most painful consequence that students get is the fact that we confiscate vapes. They're devices about as big as half of a name tag. They go anywhere from $40 to $60, $70, $80. They're not cheap. And so the most frequent follow-up meetings we get from students is to get it back. And we don't get it back unless a parent comes to it, which they often do. But from a student standpoint, if they're found first time, if they're found second time, third time, we confiscate the device. As I said earlier, we saw a significant increase in activity last year. Last year is when vaping amongst adolescents really kind of exploded. And it's been significantly reduced this year. Our response, we did send out something to parents earlier this year, a description of it and information, things that they